This happened around 10 years ago when I was a high school student. One winter's day, there was an accident. Apparently, I pushed an old woman onto the train tracks. I say apparently because I have absolutely no memory of this at all. This wasn't a station I usually visited, and I can't really remember anything that happened after I left home. The first I heard of all this happening was when the police were questioning me at the station about it. Seeing my parents crying seemed to bring me back to my senses. Luckily, there were no trains passing at the time, so the woman only suffered some bruises. But witnesses said I was screaming stuff at the woman like, "It's all your fault I bought this. Get rid of it. Die, die, die." And even as 5 people tried to hold me back, I kept screaming at her. Being that I was a high school student, in the end we settled out of court, but rumors soon spread at school and they had no choice but to expel me. One day, around a year later, my mother told me something shocking. "That old woman you pushed off the platform, she's dead." I was certain that I was at fault, like, did her hitting her head cause it? I was so shocked I couldn't stand on my own 2 feet any longer. But it seemed that a businessman at that same station pushed her this time, and because a train was passing, she died instantly. Like me, however, he had no memory of what happened, and witnesses heard him screaming the same thing as me, too. Hey guys, I'm your host, Tara A. Devlin, and welcome to this week's episode of Kowabana, true Japanese scary stories from around the internet. In case you missed it, Toshiden Exploring Japanese Urban Legends Volume 4 is now available. Once again, there are a host of new legends to explore, both horrifying, bizarre, and otherwise. And of course, a new season of the podcast to go with it. That season has almost reached its end, so if you haven't checked it out yet, it's available right now. Happy New Year, everyone! I hope you had or are still having some great holidays. And I thought we might kick this year off by taking a look back at some of the best, most terrifying stories from last year. These are some of my personal favourites, so I thought it might be nice to kick back, reminisce, and experience the fear all over again. First up, a young girl goes to play at her friend's house, and while there, runs into her sickly older sister. Upon returning home that night, she receives some devastating news. But what has really been going on all this time? Find out in T-chan. One day, T-chan asked me to come over to her house because she had just bought a new video game. I hadn't hung out with her for a long time, but I hesitated, wondering about her older sister and what the other kids in my class might think if they saw us. But it wasn't like I hated T-chan, so I agreed to go. We played her new video game, ate snacks and such. We had a lot of fun together. "T-chan, I have to use the toilet," I said at some point. Her bedroom was on the 2nd floor, and the toilet was on the 1st, near the front door. I'd been there numerous times, so I knew where it was. When I was done and about to return to T-chan's room, suddenly I saw her older sister standing by the front door. "Ah, hello." As always, her older sister's complexion looked a little pale, but she said hello back. As I started walking away, she called out my name, which was a rather rare occurrence. "M-chan?" "Yes?" "Thank you for always hanging out with T-chan. She's very important to me, you know." "Ah, sure." After that, I returned to T-chan's room. She had racked up a great score on the video game in the meantime, and I immediately forgot about her older sister and got wrapped up in the game instead. We played until curfew, and then I went home. ate dinner, and got ready for bed. But then, the phone rang. My mother picked it up. "Oh, hello. Thank you for looking after Em today." It sounded like T-Chan's mother was on the other end. "Eh? Eh? Eh? You're kidding. That can't be true." The way my mother was talking, it was clear that something had happened. "Is that so? My deepest condolences." Condolences? That was a word you used when someone died, right? Her older sister was sick, so did that mean she died? I thought as I watched my mother on the phone. When she hung up, she told me what happened. "Em, listen to me very carefully. You see, T-Chan, she passed away." "Eh? T-Chan?" "She was just involved in an accident. They took her to the hospital, but they didn't make it in time." "Eh? You're lying. We just played together today. How could she?" H-Chan, T-Chan's older sister, wasn't feeling well, so her mother spent the whole day at the hospital with her. Let me write down what I later heard. So, her father was working late, meaning her mother had to go with her older sister to the hospital. She then called T-Chan and told her to buy some dinner from the convenience store. But T-Chan would be lonely waiting at home all day by herself, so she invited me over and then told her mother about all the fun we had that day. When she hung up the phone, she then did as her mother said, got on her bike and made her way to the convenience store. But on the way, she was involved in an accident. The ambulance took her to the same hospital her older sister was in, where their mother was. But by the time she got there, she was no longer breathing. We were in so much shock that both my mother and I bawled our eyes out. We had just been playing together and having so much fun. How could she be dead? That night, I could barely sleep. As I was thinking about all the things we talked about that day, and even the snacks we ate together, suddenly I realized something. Her sister was in the hospital, but I had seen her at their house, right? We had spoken. I even thought at the time that she didn't look so well. A chill came over me. I was too scared to sleep, and by the next morning, I had broken out in a fever and didn't go to school. T-Chan's wake was the following evening. My fever had gone down by then, so I attended with my mother. I couldn't stop crying. Even our teacher and the kids who spoke ill of her at school were crying. T-Chan's mother was also crying, but when she saw me, she came over. "M-chan, thank you. T told me over the phone how much fun you had together. Thank you for giving her one last happy memory in the end." T-Chan was cremated the next day. And 1 week after that, we got another call from her mother. This time, her older sister had passed away. I attended T-Chan's older sister's funeral with my mother. Thinking of how their mother had lost 2 daughters in a row, mine wanted to help out in any way she could. A short while after that, T-Chan's mother called us once again. She was getting divorced, and because she was returning to her parents' house, she was finishing up odds and ends. She said she wanted to thank us for everything we had done for her. When we got to the house, the entrance and living room had already been cleaned out. She spoke with my mother for a while about all sorts of things. She said that T-chan's sister had been in the hospital for a few days before the accident, and the doctors said she didn't have much time left. I think she didn't want to go alone, so she waited for T to pass first, she said. A chill ran through me. Come to think of it, when I saw T-chan's older sister in the house that day, she had said something. She's very important to me. Did that mean she took T-chan with her? T-chan's mother then said that she no longer needed that new game we played that day, or her other ones, so would I like to take them off her hands? My mother told me I should take them. It would almost be like a memorial service for her. I did as they said and took them. I stared at the games once we returned home. There were 8 of them in a square plastic basket. That new game I played with her was there, and there were 2 games I'd never played before as well. Wondering what they were, I looked at the back cover and then opened them. Inside, I found a piece of paper folded into 4. Opening it, the following was written on it. It's not fair it's always you. Mum always spends all her time with you. Nobody would care if I wasn't here. Maybe I should just disappear. Because of you, I don't have any friends at school. M-chan is my only friend. It's all your fault. It's all your fault. I wish you'd hurry up and die from your sickness. Hurry up and die. I hate you, H. There was also another sheet of paper inside that one. It was cut into the shape of a person, and it had the word Hiromi written on the face, and it was covered in the word die written in red pen. I screamed before I could stop myself, and surprised, my mother came running to see what was wrong. She then saw the letter. T-chan must have been lonely, she said with tears running down her cheeks. Her older sister was always sick, so her mother had to stay by her side all the time. You did something good, playing with her when she was lonely and being her friend. That letter would bring T-chan's mother nothing but harm if she knew of it, so we decided to keep it to ourselves. My mother and I agreed to burn it and never speak of it again. I then put the video games away as well, not wanting to see them again. Several years passed, and last year I moved out of home to start living by myself for the first time while I attended university. When I was cleaning up my room, I found those video games. I looked at them, remembering T-chan and what happened when we were younger. Nostalgia washed over me. As I was looking at the games, I saw the other game I'd never played before and didn't open at that time either. This time I opened it. Inside was a piece of paper folded into 4. Feeling a sense of déjà vu, I opened it. M has been cold towards me recently. I thought she was my only friend. I thought we would be friends forever. What should I do to make her stay my friend? Maybe I should buy a new video game and invite her over to play. But still, M annoys me. Why is she friendly with other people? She's just like Mum. I should just disappear. I'm so sad. Inside that piece of paper was yet another, cut into the shape of a person. Nervously, I looked at it. M was written on its face. And on the body, when you turn 20, die. My 20th birthday is next month. Next up, a young boy goes hunting with his grandfather in the mountains, but while there, they encounter something that's about to change their lives forever. Will they all make it out alive? Find out in Fishies. This happened quite some time ago, so let me write it down as I remember it. When I think about what happened now that I'm much older, it's honestly hard to believe, even though it actually happened to me. Perhaps it's a mixture of not just my memories of the event, but the nightmares I had after as well. To be perfectly honest, I don't remember having any nightmares, but over time, I started to think that that's what they were. This happened around 30 years ago, when I was a junior high student and there were still people who made a living by hunting. My grandfather enjoyed hunting at the time, and he often went out with his two beloved hunting dogs. One of them was white, like snow, the other black, like ink, so their names were Shido and Kuro. My grandfather was proud of his smart dogs, and I remember them quickly becoming friendly with me too. He also sometimes took me with them when it wasn't the snowy season. My parents never looked very happy about that, but it was the one thing I always looked forward to. I don't remember it ever being exhausting, so I guess when I was with him, we never went too far. My grandfather never used buckshot, probably to avoid accidental shootings, and whenever we were on the mountain, he always told me to stay by his side. And if I wasn't by his side, I remember he never fired either. One day, evening arrived and my grandfather oddly hadn't caught a single thing. It was almost time to go home, so he was a little panicked, and I remember he kept muttering things to himself like, "This is weird," and "What on earth is going on?" Looking back on it now, my grandfather had many years of experience in the mountains, so he was no doubt able to sense that something was different to usual. It was around that point that he finally saw it. "What's that?" I followed his puzzled gaze, and there was an animal eating fish sitting on the border between the rocky area and some trees. "Is that a monkey?" Now, it admittedly did look similar to a monkey, but I didn't think it actually was one. It was around the same size, and it had big sad eyes like a monkey, but how can I put it? It had this gross, slippery feeling to it. I can't really describe it well, but it was clearly not something I'd ever seen before. After what happened, I didn't want to look up similar animals in an encyclopedia because I didn't want to remember what happened. As for what was similar or different to other animals, again, I didn't want to check in detail, but at any rate, it was a creature I'd never seen before. "I've never seen an animal like that before. But let's try to take it down, huh?" my grandfather said. He motioned for me to cover my ears, and then he fired. The creature fell behind a rock, and my grandfather reacted as well. Thinking it was down, suddenly the bushes started to move and we realized he had missed. The dogs immediately ran after it, but before long they returned empty-handed and looking apologetic. We walked over to where that creature had been sitting, and there were a few Japanese salmon lying on the rocks that it hadn't yet finished eating. "Well, this is tonight's dinner then," my grandfather said, as he happily collected the fish. As evening was pressing down on us, we went to a hunting cabin that a friend of my grandfather's had nearby. It was there for hunters to stay in overnight, and it was basically equipped for people to eat and sleep in, and that was it. "Oh, it's good, huh?" my grandfather said several times as he ate the grilled fish, but I was grossed out at the thought of that creature touching them, so I couldn't bring myself to eat any. And there wasn't much fish to begin with, so my grandfather and the dogs quickly finished them all. That night, I found it hard to get to sleep. Ish. Then I heard a voice outside. At first, I thought I was just imagining it, so I didn't pay much attention. But then the voice got louder, and it sounded like someone speaking with a slurred voice or like baby talk. Fishies! Fishies! It sounded like it was saying. Before long, I heard something scraping along the wall of the cabin outside, and then the sound moved higher to the roof. Something's here. Next thing I knew, something with round, glowing red eyes was looking down at me from the corner of the window. It was too dark to clearly see anything, but instinctively I knew it was that creature. And this time, I clearly heard it. Fishies! Fishies! Give back my fishies! I screamed before I could stop myself. Shocked, my grandfather came running, but the creature was nowhere to be seen. Of course, he didn't believe me at first, and he laughed me off, saying I must have had a bad dream. But when he saw how terrified I was, he started to take me a little more seriously. After talking with him, I calmed down a little. At that point, I realized it was impossible for a creature to speak our language, and so I convinced myself that it really was just a dream. But still, I remained scared, so my grandfather moved to sleep next to me. Even after my grandfather fell asleep, I stayed awake, terrified. And before long, I sensed that creature again, so I woke him up. Fishies! Fishies! Give back my fishies! This time, my grandfather also heard the voice. He had nerves of steel, and he probably didn't want to appear scared in front of me, so he screamed at it. They're all gone. The dogs and I ate them all up. Then he loaded his gun and stepped outside. It was pretty dark, so it was unlikely he actually hit the creature, but he was able to chase it away. Go get it! He screamed at his dogs as the creature fled. They followed it into the trees, and their barking gradually got further and further away. I've been walking around this mountain for decades, and that's the first time I've ever seen anything like that, my grandfather said as he reloaded his gun. If it comes back again, this time I'll be ready for it. There was a sound by the entrance. When we turned to see what it was, we found one of the dogs lying unmoving on the ground. And in the darkness of the forest ahead of us, 2 round eyes glowed. Fishies! Fishies! Give back my fishies! I was so terrified that my mind went blank. I couldn't even scream. I just trembled on the spot. But my grandfather was so angry at what happened to his dog that he grabbed his gun and ran after the thing. 2 shots echoed in the darkness, and then everything fell silent. Then, suddenly, I heard a voice that I'll never forget. Fishies! Fishies! This time the voice sounded different, like it was shouting in excitement. I don't really remember what happened after that. I was just a kid, but I still realized that both my grandfather and his dogs had died. Terrified, I started running, and I guess at some point I fell from the path and knocked myself unconscious. Luckily, a hunter found me, and when I came back to, I was lying in a hospital bed. I tried desperately to explain to the grown-ups what happened, but they didn't take me seriously. The doctor claimed that I was simply so scared that I lost the ability to tell the difference between what was real and what wasn't. Because of that, I had to spend even more time in the hospital, and sadly, I wasn't even able to attend my grandfather's funeral. In the end, they determined that a bear or some other large wild animal had killed him. Because nobody would believe me, I stopped talking about what happened, and I started telling myself that it really must have been a dream. But if that terrifying night really was just a dream, where on earth did it come from? No matter how many times I look back on it, it just doesn't make any sense. My mother spoke to me about my grandfather's funeral, and apparently one of his hunting friends said to her, "This was definitely not the work of a bear." These days, I can't even eat river fish at all, and when I remember what happened to the dogs, I can't stomach anything at all. The man in this next story tears down houses for a living, but when he's on the job one day, he comes across something in a house that, quite frankly, seems like it shouldn't even exist. Find out what in The House with a Strange Layout. I demolish houses for a living, and sometimes I come across houses with a strange layout. Like, sometimes a set of stairs continues all the way to the ceiling with nowhere else to go. Or there are hallways that end in a sudden dead end. It's not hard to imagine that these things happen while extending or renovating the house, however. Sometimes I even find small hidden rooms while I'm tearing a house down too. These are no doubt related to the owner's private hobbies. But recently, I came across a house that defied all logic. It was a one-story house that had apparently been left empty for quite some time. It was rather old, but not really old enough to call it abandoned just yet. I thought it would be a waste to tear it down, but the owner insisted he wanted all of it gone. Everything. We started tearing things down with the digger, and before long, we found a room that was about 6 tatami mats large. This entire room, other than the ceiling, was covered in porcelain tiles, so at first I thought it must have been the bathroom. But something about it was weird. There was a hole in the center of the room with a metal cover that appeared to be a drain, but it wasn't connected to a tub. In fact, there were no water pipes or plumbing at all, so it couldn't have been a bathroom. But even stranger still was that the room was made up of 4 walls without any doors or windows. There was no way in or out. How on earth did the person who laid the tiles get out? Well, maybe they built the walls backwards, if that makes any sense. But it was hard to imagine why anyone would go to that much trouble. Either way, something about the room felt off, so I tried not to think too much about it and finished tearing it down. When I was done, there was nothing left but some empty land. Every time I look at it now, that plot is still empty. I can't help but think that the owner knows what happened there, and if he builds there again, something terrible will happen, so he's afraid. The young man in this next story heads out one morning to buy some cigarettes, ignoring a rather odd warning from his father. An act he soon regrets. But why? Find out in Family Rule. This happened 5 or 6 years ago, I think. Autumn had passed, so I guess it was around December or so. Because I went to bed early the night before, I woke up rather early the next day. I think it was right before sunrise, but my head was still foggy and half asleep. Anyway, I wanted a cigarette, but I didn't have any. I really wanted one for some reason, and as annoying as it was, I got out of bed to go buy some. I glanced at the living room, and my dad was already awake. He was eating as he read the newspaper. "I'm gonna grab some smokes," I said, and as I was putting on my shoes, I heard him reply. But it sounded muffled, and all I could make out was "today" and "be careful." It was like some kind of weird noise was blocking him, almost like words that weren't really words were squished in between what he was saying. Plus, he was the type of guy who usually just grunted or whatever in reply, so him talking that much was weird to begin with. At any rate, I didn't think much of it at the time and just said, "Yeah, all right," as I left the house. My head still felt sleepy, and as I walked to the vending machine, I thought about how cold it was, and how beautiful the sunrise was, and so on. And even though I was still half asleep, I still said "good morning" to an old guy who was cleaning as I passed. "Oh," he muttered, sounding just like my father. Again, all I managed to make out was "morning." But still, I didn't pay much attention and soon reached the vending machine. I grabbed some akamaru. I immediately took one out so I could smoke it on the way home, and the moment I lit it up, it was like the fog in my head cleared. But at the same time, I realized things around me were rather odd. First, there was supposed to be just one tobacco vending machine and 2 for drinks. But instead, there were 2 for tobacco and 2 for drinks, making 4 in total. Did they put in another one yesterday? I wondered. But looking at this new one, I couldn't read the printed characters. Plus, there was no space to put in coins or notes. The drink machines were the same, and they looked almost like marble, but rusted. Second, I had just been thinking about how beautiful the sunrise looked, and now it looked almost like a dark purple, and it was far from beautiful. Huh? Eh? What the hell? I started to panic. And then I realized that all the nearby houses had their lights on as well. For a moment, I wondered if it was actually evening, but when I checked my phone, it was definitely morning. And for some reason, my phone had no signal too. I decided that I should just head home for now, and turned to go back the way I came. But no matter how far I walked, I didn't recognize any of the scenery around me. The old guy who was cleaning was also gone, and there was this strange, raw smell in the air as well. I was beyond confused. I couldn't find my house, and everything looked different. And as I stood there, dumbfounded, suddenly I saw someone was standing right in front of me. Thinking it might be the old cleaning guy, I looked up to see his face, but his face wasn't there. Instead, it was something flat and blank, like a stomach or chest, and when I looked even further up, I finally saw his face. I don't know how to describe it. It was kind of like a kindergarten kid had mixed together 3 or 4 clay faces. Unable to grasp what was going on, my mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. He again mumbled something, and I thought I could make out "not" and "here." But next thing I knew, it felt like something smashed the side of my head. The impact and pain was so much that I thought, strangely, calmly, that I was dead before everything went black. The last thing I saw was that thing dragging me, holding my leg that was bent in a strange direction. When I came back to, that old cleaning guy was right in front of me. "Huh? Didn't you just pass by?" "What?" he said. There was nothing wrong with my body, and my leg wasn't bent either. Looking around, it was the familiar scenery of my neighborhood. When I got home, my face pale, my father was still there, even though he was usually at work at this time. "I told you to be careful, didn't I?" he said as soon as he saw my face. "It's purple today." "What? Do you know about this?" I asked. He said he was going to be late for work, however, so he'd tell me about it when he got back. When he got home that night, this is what he told me. Our family has a rule not to go outside when the sunrise is purple. When my father was younger and got his license, he went for a drive before sunrise one day and suddenly found himself lost in a strange place. Apparently, when he got back, it was just after sunrise. And it seemed that today was going to be purple. So he shifted his job back a bit so he could see how things were going to play out. That was why he told me to be careful as well. And that's what happened. But if my dad knew all of that was going to happen, then he should have stopped me before I went out. A young boy enjoys exploring the massive storehouse at his grandmother's house during the holidays. And as you might expect, inside he finds something rather odd and mysterious. At first sight, it appears to be a gorgeous box. But what shocking secrets does it hide inside? Find out in Body Parts Box. So, this is a little out of the blue, but I'm afraid of boxes. Big ones, small ones, it doesn't matter. They terrify me. If the lid is open and you can see inside, then it's fine. But if the lid is closed, there's just no way. I tremble in fear. It all started with an experience that I had in junior high. My grandmother's house on my mother's side had a large storehouse. One of those types with the thick earthen walls. And for a child, well, it's like a treasure mountain, right? Whenever we went there with our parents during the summer holidays, my brother, 1 year younger than me, and I would always go exploring there. It was packed with interesting stuff like old armor, broken Japanese swords, and all sorts of agricultural equipment we didn't really understand. One day, my brother went shopping with our parents and grandmother, so I explored the storehouse by myself. Because I no longer had to watch out for my brother, I went further inside than usual as well. Inside, there were all sorts of things that creeped me out, like a wooden board in the shape of a person, and a burlap sack full of weird thorns. Feeling uncomfortable, I took just a quick look around, and then turned to leave. Then, I saw it on an old chest of drawers. It was on top of what appeared to be an old Shinto altar sitting on the drawers. A box of about 15 centimeters square, covered in gorgeous gold lacquer. This box was so gorgeous that it seemed immediately out of place in the dirty old storehouse. And as though it was drawing me in, I picked it up. Looking closer at it, it appeared to open from the middle region, almost like the treasure chests from Dragon Quest. Excited, I slowly opened the lid. And was immediately disappointed. Inside the box was yet another smaller, identical box. Oh, come on, I thought, and then I opened that box. As I expected, inside that was yet another smaller box. It was just like a Matryoshka doll. A box, inside a box, inside a box, inside a box. As I continued opening them, I noticed there was something written on the bottom of the boxes. Nails, teeth, ears, nose, kidneys. All of the boxes had body parts written on them. I was getting more and more afraid, but I couldn't stop now. I kept going. Lungs, pancreas, spleen, hair. I finally reached the last box. It was barely 1 centimeter large. On the front, it said sincerely, "End." Looking at the back, it said, "Skull." Feeling both curious and afraid, I slowly opened this final box. Inside was a small piece of folded paper. Disappointed once more, I opened it. The above-mentioned articles will be collected shortly. 2 months later, my younger brother died. He went missing on the way home from school. If he went missing, then how do I know he died? Well, they found something on the route he took home. His brains. The rest of him was never found. When I heard that, I was more frightened than anyone, even my parents. Brains was the only word not written on those boxes, after all. You shouldn't be so careless with mysterious boxes. When a young man goes camping with colleagues, he notices a missed call late at night. A missed call from home. But nobody's at home right now, so who could it possibly be? Find out in Call from Home. Last summer, I went camping at the Nasu Highlands. All of us new recruits who started that spring got along really well, and so we planned for 5 of us, 3 guys and 2 girls, to spend 1 night there. Since we all had 3 days off, there was no need to arrange time off with the company together, and things proceeded smoothly. Plus, one of the girls was a colleague I had just started dating. When we arrived, we visited the Nasu Highland Park, Nasu Safari Park, and also lit some fireworks. We all made curry and rice together, and then played cards late into the night. We were so tired from all the fun that we fell asleep without even getting changed. And before I knew it, I fell asleep too. I had a dream. A dream that somebody was shaking and calling me. It felt like they were shaking me around my waist, and when I woke up, I realized my phone in my pants pocket was ringing. I generally left it on silent, so it didn't seem to have woken anyone else up. I looked at the screen and it said, "Home." At this hour? Half asleep, I started to panic, wondering if something happened at home. But as I answered it, suddenly the phone hung up. Checking the call history, I saw that home had called me 3 times. Careful not to wake my girlfriend or the others, I went outside and tried to call back. The phone rang and rang, but nobody answered. They had just called me, and yet neither my father, mother, nor younger sister was answering. Did something happen to them? Just as I was about to call my younger sister's phone, a horrifying realization washed over me. I quickly sobered up, and the anxiety I felt quickly turned to fear. This spring, I started my career and moved out of home to start living alone for the first time. I changed home in my phone to parents, and now my current apartment's phone was listed as home instead. I hadn't even given my girlfriend a spare key yet, and so how did I receive 3 calls from an apartment that was supposed to be empty? I woke the others up and explained what was going on. Someone said that maybe it was a thief or an intruder, but then my girlfriend said, "Next time they call, let me answer." However, the phone didn't ring again after that. After that trip, my girlfriend and I got into a huge argument. She was convinced I had a girl on the side who had a key to my apartment, and it was this woman making prank calls. Of course, I knew best of all that I most definitely did not have another girl on the side. But in the end, this was why she broke up with me. It was no doubt difficult for her to be in the same workplace as me after that, so she soon quit as well. But what on earth was up with those calls? There was no way it could have been a thief or an intruder. And even if someone did break in, there was no way for them to know my number. Either someone I knew had a spare key, or it had to be something supernatural. Either answer was honestly terrifying, so I tried not to think about it anymore. And shortly after that, I moved out. Just recently, I remembered something. Shortly before that trip, my girlfriend and I got into an argument over something strange. I got a call from her, and when I answered, she went, "What? You just called me, right?" "No," I said. "Well, I have a call from you." "I didn't call you." "You did." She refused to believe me, and in the end, I gave in. "Well, I don't remember it, but maybe I did call you." Someone called me while we were camping, and someone called my girlfriend while I was home without me noticing. Considering that nothing has happened to me since moving, it must have been either the person who lived there before me, or perhaps someone not of this world. Finally this week, a young man shares a story he heard from his grandfather during his days as a fisherman around Kagoshima. The sea is dotted with all sorts of uninhabited islands, at least until one man takes up residence on one. But is he truly alone there? Find out in Uninhabited Island. This is a story I heard from my late grandfather when he was drunk at a memorial service one time. When my grandfather was young, he worked as a fisherman in Kagoshima. He set out every day on a veteran's boat. The sea around that area was full of uninhabited islands, and there was a legend that pirates had hidden treasure on one of them long ago. It's hard to imagine now, but half a century ago, quite a few people actually believed those stories. When one magazine printed a story about it, suddenly the area was full of treasure hunters, and that island sprang to life. It died down after a few years, but one man decided to stick around and live on that island. That man's name was Gensan, and he was around 50 years old. He was small but tough, and at a glance appeared difficult to approach, but he got along well with all the local fishermen. He was also friendly with Koji-san, who was my grandfather's boss, and whenever they passed by his island on their fishing boat, they would wave to Gensan as he sat in his shabby hut on the beach. 2 years after Gensan started living there, something strange happened. It was the beginning of spring, and the fishing boat was passing by the island around sunset after finishing for the day. Koji-san was the first to notice that there was no light on in the hut. It was still too early for Gen-san to be asleep, and at this hour they should have been able to see a light. Maybe he went to bed early, but something didn't feel right. Koji-san said they were going to go over to check it out. When they got close to the shore, my grandfather remained on the boat, while Koji-san got in a smaller one and made his way over to the island. About 20 minutes later, my grandfather heard screams coming from the island. Panicking, he looked towards the shore, and he saw what looked like Koji-san frantically waving a torch around. He was worried that something might have happened, but all he could do was wait where he was. Another hour or so passed, and then the small boat returned. Both Koji-san and Gen-san were on it, and both were pale and covered in sweat. Koji-san in particular was shaking a lot, and when my grandfather asked him what happened, Koji-san just screamed at him to get the boat going. When they safely arrived back at the harbour, they went into the union office, and once Koji-san had calmed down, he started telling my grandfather what happened. When Koji-san approached the hut, he heard something groaning. Thinking that maybe Gen-san had injured himself, he opened the door and looked inside. Pointing his torch to the rear left, he saw something strange there. Something black and shiny was on the bed, and Gen-san was struggling beneath it. Koji-san screamed before he could stop himself and dropped the torch. Then, the slimy thing made a strange sound before it went out the window above the bed. It slithered out, just like a snake. Picking up the torch, Koji-san then ran over to the bed. His eyes shut tight, Gen-san was groaning in pain, with his arms and legs stuck in the air as though he was paralyzed. Koji-san violently shook him, and he opened his eyes, but they were unfocused. Even so, he still helped him up and then got him on the boat. By the time he was done talking, Gen-san had come back too, but he didn't seem to understand what was going on. All he remembered was suffering from sleep paralysis or something, and then Koji-san waking him up. That night, Gen-san stayed in the office, and then returned to the island the next day. Koji-san and my grandfather suggested he leave the island for good, which he agreed to, and after gathering up his things and cleaning up his mess, they agreed to pick him up the following day. But when they arrived the next day, Gen-san refused to leave. He insisted he was just tired, and what Koji-san saw was nothing more than an illusion. His tone was violent, and his eyes had changed colour, so Koji-san gave up in defeat and got back on the boat alone. Gen-san lived alone on the island for another 6 months after that, but then one day, he suddenly disappeared. The fishermen all looked for him, but they were unable to find him. They decided he must have drowned. But for a while after that, my grandfather and Koji-san kept looking for Gen-san whenever they passed the island. Over time, they didn't like seeing his hut falling apart more and more, however, so they decided to take a different route. According to my grandfather, the way they thought about it also changed from "where could he be?" to "what will we do if he's still there?" He wondered if maybe they might see something that looked like Gen-san, but was actually now something entirely different. Sometimes they spoke about what Koji-san saw on the island after that, and one time Koji-san said, "Come to think of it, the moment I shone my light on it, for just a second, I saw a leg that split into 5 parts at the end." A big thank you and shout out to this week's Kami tier members, Emerald and Kenneth Kawamoto. It's thanks to your support, along with everyone else, that I'm able to keep doing this show, so thank you very much. Don't forget to check out Toshiden, Exploring Japanese Urban Legends Volume 4, out right now. And check out our merchandise store at kowabana-shop.fourthwall.com. And if you'd like to chat about this week's stories, come and join us in the Kowabana Discord. You can find that link in the description or on kowabana.net. You can also check out our Patreon at patreon.com/TaraADevlin for exclusive bonus stories and extras, or our YouTube channel at youtube.com/KowabanaJapan for all sorts of Japanese horror you won't find anywhere else. Thanks, guys. Stay safe. Here's to a fantastic year for all of us, and I'll see you again next time for even more Kowabana. True Japanese scary stories from around the internet. Want even more scary stories? Head over to kowabana.net for new translations every week. You can also join our Patreon for exclusive stories you won't find anywhere else. Head over to kowabana.net now.